All right, first question. Wait, I thought there was something else there. Did someone delete it? I thought there was another question there other than Nolan's.
Maybe? I feel like something was there, but maybe just it already got solved.
Anyway, let's see here. When you get back, would it be okay if you went over the camera sequencer? Yeah, I could go over the camera sequencer. I had a little trouble with it too.
Let me... Because I think I got, like... I got everything there, I just don't know how to get it working.
Right, so it's not the most friendly tool, I admit. And when it's active, you're looking through whatever that current shot is, right? So if it's not active, then you're looking through like whatever camera you want. So I think we understand that. So when I switch here, and yeah, and then I go to play it or move this or scrub the playhead, now I'm looking through whatever this current shot is.
Okay.
All right, so we got that. And then I noticed that this is partly by my own lack of understanding of the camera sequence, but I found later that my shots were like the whole length of time, like 1 to 800. And when you bring them in here, it sees that length, and then what we can do is like scale that shot, because right now I'm only seeing part of this looking shot, because the actual looking shot is what? It's like all the way across. Let's just change this to 800. Right, it goes, yeah, like it goes way over there, and I like some of the detail. I like the composition here, and I wanted a little bit of that.
Yeah.
So when looking through the camera sequencer, I thought I probably should have 2 shots of this, and as far as I can tell, I don't think I can like move this over and still see the beginning of it. I think I'm going to see somewhere further. Maybe I'm wrong. It looks like I'm still seeing the beginning of it. Okay, so let me get to a couple things I did figure out. So there's a few things I didn't figure out in the camera sequencer. That would be where it's stopping and starting. But I did figure out these simple things here about removing overlaps. So if you got an overlap and you choose to remove the overlap, it'll do that.
Oh, that's cool.
And if you have gaps, it'll remove the gap. Yeah, tie them together. Gaps and overlaps, okay, all at the same time. I'm not sure what ripple edit is. Haven't played with that. Track height, which is just that. Nothing big deal there. Swap left and swap right. I was trying to play with this, but I didn't see anything different there. Frame all, that makes sense. Create a shot, okay. So, and then we had basic things like lock this layer, mute it, basically silence it, mute it, move it up, move it down, and I'm not sure what this doesn't give me a pop-up of what that means. I'm not sure. And then making the play blast from it, this I know is a little bit tricky. It's not play blast from here, it's play blast from here. So we can play blast all the shots or play blast the sequence. all the shots, and I would play blast as an AVI and use this first codec, whatever that is, whatever Maya gives you there. Short of getting it done here, your alternative is to screen record with something else, like OBS, like how I publish with OBS, and then cut it together in some other software. Like Bishop said he did that. But this is about all I'm going to get right now. Interestingly, it processes fractional keys. You can see the number here at the top. It's processing. Alright, there should be a movie. So it looks like it published them as 3 separate clips. Not quite what I wanted. So play blast all shots, not quite what I wanted. Play blasted as a sequence. That seems more like what I want, just putting it all together into one movie. And it play blasted the wireframes and any lighting and any cameras that are visible, any of that stuff. So if you want to disable any of those items, like turn on the lighting, turn off the wireframe, turn on shadows if you want them. Let's look at that sequencer again. So I guess sequencer doesn't respect the lighting. I didn't know that. So I changed the viewport here to show me lights and shadows. But sequencer doesn't see it? Or is that because that's per camera?
And I'm pretty sure since you already did a play blast, it's showing you what the previous render is. Because you can see on the borders, it's showing the actual lighting in the viewport.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it is.
You can click the video in the viewport and delete it, and then if you were to the actual one, and then you can like delete it. It's very odd.
Yeah. Okay, so you're saying like go back to my directory and just delete it straight up right here?
No, it's actually just in the viewport. So if you like just click the very center of it, it will like select it as if it's a completely separate thing. I found, and then sometimes you delete it. This is something that I might be a bit off on how you specifically select it, but I was able to simply select it and then just get rid of it.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting. It's showing as a worm. It's showing as an image plane right here. See, image plane.
Oh.
I didn't know that. Okay, so let's take a look at that. Image planes show up as shapes. You see? Watch this. See, there it is. So it's showing you the shape as a sequence. That makes a lot of sense now. So it's shooting it and then bringing it back as an image sequence. So here it is. And it's basically a texture in the camera. And the type of texture, instead of being a texture, is a movie. That's interesting. I didn't know it was tying it back in that way. Okay, learning moment here. So yeah, it is. It's a shape. So if we dig through any of these others, if there's a shape underneath that camera, yeah, there it is. There's the shape. There's the image plane. So I'll take the image plane and delete it. Yeah, and now we're back to lighting. How about that? Very cool. I like it with the shadows turned on. I think you should go back and produce whatever you produced, June and Bishop, and publish it with the shadows. Right?
I'll do it right now.
Yeah, I think it looks pretty cool with the shadows. I wanted to talk a little bit more before you publish that. Before you do that, let's see what else it can do. Okay, so check this out, and we'll get back to the sequencer. I'm sorry, Nolan. I'm kind of bouncing now.
It's all good. I think I was trying to move stuff around, and because of that, things got a little bit screwed up. Because, like, I tried, like, making, like, the looking shot smaller, and, like, it would do the whole thing in, like, a couple seconds. The whole shot. So I don't know what I did.
Actually, let's not get away from the sequencer. So I want to look, I'll come back to rendering in a bit, rendering lights, and some other folks had questions about actual rendering of it. So I'll talk about that in a bit. Let's look at the data that's in here. So the attribute editor for this shot. So I'm saying this is where it starts, this is where it ends. This is the starting frame. So I'm saying it's a 200 frame shot. It starts at frame 18. And I guess I have a scale something higher than 1.0. So I must have scaled it, which would, what, in effect, slow down the shot. It looks like I still see the... Let's see, which shot is this? This is the looking shot? Image plane? Let's get rid of that. My son, he's rustling, waking up now. I think my voice woke him up. Okay, so if I say this is a 400 frame shot with a scale of 1, no, not 11, 1, then that's the true 400 frames. But if I start at frame 400, I should be getting the... So it does move it to the second half of that shot. Let me hide these two. Hide those. And fit this. Just get this out of the way for the moment. So I'm getting the second half of the shot. Alright, I'll be right back. I gotta pass baby to mama. Alright. So, yeah, so this is something that I wanted to get a firmer grasp on, is that can I move question that I have in my mind is, can I move this clip but still start at the beginning of it, or yeah, something like that. So is the beginning of this clip still the beginning, which it looks like it is, so I can move it to a different point in time, and it's still the beginning of its clip. Okay, so I got that. Now, the question is, can I start this clip halfway in its process or further into its process, and you know what I mean? Like, can I start this camera like here?
I think so. Because like what I think I just did when I was doing stuff is I had the train shot over, like it kind of like goes out the window, and I had that from 1 to 800 frames. But the problem was at frames like the frames between 1 and 100, it was, you could see the empty space in the area. So I made the start frame 100 and end frame was still 800, and that took out that first part.
Yeah, you're right. And I just did that. I just said, okay, start at 200. So now the shot starts at 2, but I can start the shot anywhere in this time. Yeah, good. But the shot starts at 200. Good. Okay, so then I can control the length of the shot. And then it says, okay, now I'm getting it. So the start frame of the camera, and where does this camera's start frame start? That's what this one would mean. So I can say start at 350. So then it would start here at 350. Then I can speed up or slow down the shot, right? So if I want to speed up the shot, I could scale it down. So it should happen faster. Yeah, so it should happen faster. Good. Right? So as opposed to if I slow down, too much. If I slow down the shot, too much. Yeah, so now it's a lot slower. Yeah, okay, good. Okay, good. And then I'm not sure what number it's asking for here. If that's the frame, it should be where that particular shot starts. I'm not sure. And then the rest of it is just, well, that's easy to figure out. I'm not sure about this, but I guess if I said transition length is 24, I'm assuming that's in frames. That would blend it in with some other shot. If I had another shot here and I blended 24, would it somehow blend? I don't even know what the blend would look like. This is not a video editing software. I suppose it would post-process that when I process the sequence. I guess that's something I should look into. So let's do this. I'll start the worm eye one. Just for giggles, I'll put the worm eye one starting at frame 1, and then I'll snap this one here by closing the gaps. Yeah, that. And then I'll turn this one on and set this one to fade. I suppose I should have a little bit of overlap for the fade. We'll find out if that's a good idea. And okay, and then I'll process this as a sequence, and I'll globally scale the whole thing up 1920 by 1080, maximum quality, and that should do it. And then I'll delete anything else I had there, since it's all garbage. That stuff can go. Okay. You know what? And I probably should put it in the movies folder. That would make sense. Movies. Oh yeah, I got a ton of stuff in here. I guess not. Open. So, kind of looks like nothing's happening. But nope, something's happening. Higher resolution, taking longer to process. Generally speaking, I don't like rendering movies straight out of Maya. I really don't like to do that. But this is the one exception. I will generate PlayBlast movies straight out of Maya. Everything else I render out of Maya is an image sequence. Because if this thing crashes, then this movie's corrupt. Anytime now.
Real quick, Professor, that being said, for the last assignment, for the tower, how should we render that out or export it out? Did I put that in the question?
Yeah, I would do this.
Play blast?
Yeah. I mean, as a minimum, yeah, play blast. I would hide things like hide lights, hide cameras, turn off wireframes, turn on the shadows. I mean, there's a bunch of other things that I think I could do. Okay, so yeah, that's at a minimum, Marco. That's what I think you should do. I have other ways of rendering, and I'll talk about that somewhat today. But that gets into a whole nother aspect of our work. I think for the most part, PlayBlast will be sufficient for this class. I don't see any blending, transitioning, fading in any of that. I didn't see it, so I'm gonna chalk that up to figure that out later. And that's probably that. Nolan, am I hitting the issues? Because I feel like I'm still not. We're just going over the camera sequencer.
I think just going over it helped because I just messing around with it. I figured out how to change the length of shots without changing the speed by accident. Or if I do change the speed, you showed how the attribute or editor you can change it in the attribute editor for the speed.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think overall, yes, things have been working out well.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I wanted to explore this a little tighter. I didn't do that in video. The attributes, resolution. We now know that after it processes, it places the at least it looked like it. Oh, you know what? It didn't create. How interesting. We now know that it did not attach the image plane to the camera when we play blast the sequence. But if we play blast the individual shot, it attached the sequence to the camera because each shot got its own sequence, so then it just automatically mapped that sequence back to the camera. That's interesting. Grouping. Oh yeah, we didn't really look into grouping. I think selecting and moving, yeah, as a group, but I thought it would, yeah, there we go. So create grouping, so then you could scale, move groups of shots. Active shot, select a shot, ungroup the shot, delete the group in contents. Oh, no. And then, I don't know what an Uber camera is. Let's try one. What does it say? Camera sequencer shots must have the same duration in sequence and source time. That's an interesting thing. I'll have to look up what that's intended for. The Supercam. We already inspected the attribute editor and the image plane. We inspected the playlist. apparently we can import sound, though I don't have any plans to do that right now. And I don't know what an editorial is. I'm not sure what this means. So a couple of mysteries, but I don't intend to spend, a crazy amount of time mastering this thing. I just wanted to get a little bit of a hold on it and use it to produce a sequence of shots so that when you have a client someday, you can rapidly produce a little movie without going through the exhausting process of rendering when you're trying to show a proof of concept to a client. This is how I would do it. And I did do this with my last client on the Aqua Block. I just did a series of play blasts. Yeah, and I also composed in After Effects, so I did have that as a post effect, as a post process. Okay, let's go. I think that sufficiently answers exploring camera sequencer more. Sam asks, is that a question? Say if you wanted to play around with the cameras, like rather than have them snapping to each other instantly, is there a way to do a smooth transition like a fly over cam to another cam, or do you have to use a cam for that too? Okay, no, you know what? That's an interesting problem. I actually had this problem with the Aqua Block scene. So yeah, you need another camera. So if I want to smoothly go from, that's a fascinating one. Certainly advanced in thinking. Can I smoothly go from here to here? And I can't see it very clearly, so let me change the color. Okay, so if I wanted to go from that one to that one, yes, another camera. So you'll do it like this. Make a new camera. And give it a name. Let's call this one Blend Shot. Oops, spelling. Blend Shot. And like the others, I'll group it while it's still at the origin. Okay, so I want to parent constrain between this position and this position. So I need this SRT, this parent, to be parent constrained to that one. So I'll click that, bring my cursor to the outliner and tap F, and that finds the selection. Click this one, bring my cursor over here and tap F, and that finds the selection. Sorry, I got stuck on a thought there. And now I want to, what's the one really moving? Is it, this one is parent constrained to the car. This one is keyframed. This one is looking. So I think I should just track directly to the camera. So the parent constraint, we will take looking, hold control, moving, hold control, blend shot SRT. So drivers, driven, and maintain offset. No, we want it to jump 50% between the two. So there's my new camera. Again, I'll scale it up so I can see it a little more clearly. And again, I'll change color so I can see it. That's a selection color. That's fine, I guess. So I can see it. And now this camera has the blend weight. Turn this to a little gray, turn this to the slow speedometer, and with that selected, hold Control or hold Shift. And now we can blend from that position to that position, you see. And then how long I want that blend to occur or to snap into that position is entirely up to you. But you see how it keeps the rotation. So it's like it's taking the rotation of that one, taking the rotation of that one. Well, Sam, if you want to further control where this one is looking, you see, you could add a parent. So let's see here, if I group it, its parent is exactly where the camera is. This is for, what do we call these for looking? This is the look. And then you could pick some other target, whatever that might be. I forgot what the moving tracking target is. Okay, so like maybe I want it to, that's probably the same target. But anyway, you could pick any target you like, and driver driven, same constraint, aim constraint, same setting, 0, 0, -1 on aim. And so now, even though the parent is blending, from one position to the next, the child, the child's second blend shot, yeah, so anyway, come on, what is the deal now? I'm just way off of 0. There we go. Oops. Come on. There we go. I was on the wrong object. Now that's interesting. One should take me all the way. Oh, wrong object. Scroll down. Scroll down. Yeah, so there we go. So if that's 1 and that's 1, now I'm blending between the two targets. Yeah, okay. Sorry, brain fart there for a moment. But yeah, now I can blend between the two targets and it's still targeting its whatever it wants to target. You know, interestingly, I use this as well to just find something to start up a new camera. Like you could pick some position, any position of the cameras. Like let's say this red one, that's the one moving the most. I could pick a position wherever it's at and let's see, select it. Funny, I thought there was a way to pin a camera onto something that's moving. maybe I have to make that myself. I thought there was a way I could pin a camera to something that's on the go. Does anybody know of that? Does anybody know of a way to pin? Anyway. So my thought was that I could use any position of this camera, find its world position, build a new camera rig from that position by parent constraint. And when using the parent constraint without the maintain offset turned on, it'll snap to that position. So I've effectively done that, except now I have two positions. I have that position and this position I can blend between. What do you think, Sam? Does that help answer the question a little bit better? Looks like he's flipping out. So I think it's wigging out there because it doesn't know what up is. So in the parent constraint, I think I need to give it an up constraint. So the It's funny, the aim constraint should solve that because it has the up vector. And if I use scene up, it should just keep it pointing up. Yeah, there it goes. Yeah, it did it. Okay, I don't know why it didn't kick in before. That's smooth. That's it right there. The aim vector smooths it out, just like how we used the aim vector to smooth out the camera in the secluded tower scene. I don't know why it wasn't smooth the first time. And then as it passes the target, it's still looking at that target. And now I can blend to parent 1 or parent 0 or something in between. And yeah, and Sam, so that's how I'd have to get from one camera to the other. I ran into this scenario in the Aqua Block where I had one scene. So I'd go to a scene and I'd say, okay, this scene, I have a camera where I like it. And then in development, I had another scene where I had another camera where I liked it. But I needed to get these to come together. So what I did is I exported the camera rig and all of its animation. I went to File and exported the selection as a .ma, as a Maya ASCII, and then I imported that camera with all of its animation, and then I was able to blend between the two with a third camera. It's a unique situation, yeah, but it requires a little help and needs another camera. There's an aspect to some of this stuff that we haven't talked about, and that's baking the animation. We've got a lot of controls here in the scene. It's getting to be a messy scene. But if you're happy with an animation, we can actually increase the efficiency of this scene by baking the animation of the camera. So I want to talk about that after we're done with our questions. How do you shrink the file size? Post-process it. Convert it to MP4. Because Maya, I think, doesn't have an MP4 exporter. Yeah, you could share a Google Drive link. Yeah. To the AVI. Yeah.
And that's what I did. I did a Google Drive thing.
Yeah, that's okay too. She says, I thought I figured it out, but I didn't. When I changed the W0 to 0, it doesn't snap back to the window view. It only does if I change the X and Y rotation back to 0. Okay, I'm trying to figure out what you mean by that. So you gave me this screenshot where you have a moving target look. So this is the thing looking, and you're saying when you edit the weight of it, it doesn't snap back to the window. Doesn't snap back to the window. That's because it's only affecting its rotation. The weight is only affecting rotation. SRT, I think, so pin is pinned to the train car. SRT is the one that we're keyframe animating. So if you want it to come back to the window, I think your animation is on SRT. And if you want to unpin from the train car, you could animate the weight of the parent constraint of the pin. So I think that answers your question. Let me put a star on these other ones I answered. So what do you think, Javier? Does that make sense? Okay, good. Okay, I'll consider that answered. Okay, so there were a couple of things that came up in this demonstration that I'd like to cover. Number one is baking. How do I bake the animation and remove the extra controls? That's questions there. And then another one was, how do I render the image sequence? Okay, which involves a few other things. Was there any other question that you'd like me to go over before I dig into these others? Someone asked me, Marco, I think you asked me, how do I render, wait, did he ask me? Yeah, you asked me, how do I render the sequence in the secluded tower? I would render it as a play blast. And if you render as a play blast in the secluded tower, it's actually this button up here. It's this play blast. And again, I would use the same settings. The first codec, AVI, 100% quality, choose a location, change the scale. You could even use, and then you can use the time slider, or you can declare how many frames you want of the whole thing from inside the secluded tower.
All right, appreciate that. Also, just real quick, I haven't gotten the folder for the class, but I'll remind you after.
Yeah, okay, please do that. I haven't sent them out, yes.
Okay.
Right, I need to get that done. Thank you. Yeah, a reminder of that would be very helpful. A little distracted lately. Okay, so baking the animation. So here's the thing. Let's say you like the camera, where it is, where it's going. and I want to kind of lock that down. I think I can bake the position of this without keyframing anything. Let me go through my memory here real quick and see if I remember that, because there's a tool here for baking. You can bake a channel, and I'm not sure if I can. Yeah, let's see what happens. Let's see here. Yeah. Yeah, okay, so there's no channels yet to bake, so I'm going to keyframe the translation rotation anywhere in time and see if I can force this to bake. So this will be start at, let's just do time slider and sample by 1, which means every frame. Let's sample by 2s and see if it'll do it. So I got keyframes all the way across, but it looks like I have no translation rotation data. It's just it's still keeping all of that constraint data. So there's a way in which I can bake it back. So I'm going to come back to this issue. This is an important thing, to be able to take all of the effects that are moving this object around, bake it to one object as keyframes, just keyframe data, and then I can remove all of its constraints and parents and everything. We just bake it down to this one object. The reason this is so important is because that's what you actually take out to the game engine. You don't take the rig to the game engine. You just take the one object, and that one object has all the keyframe data on it. But in order to get the animation done right, we need a rig. So I'm going to look into this further. There is a way to properly bake and keep our camera data and then wipe out all the extra nodes, which will make this scene really fast. And that'll allow us to keep our cameras and then further develop our animation. Like maybe we want to put in, you know, some snow avalanche rock debris pile, and then, or some cows or whatever. We want to add something to the scene, but keep all of our shots intact. And then we just basically, by looking through our shots, like a good director, we look through our shots, we keep our shots, and then we compose within the frame of that shot. Okay, so I'll look into this further, how to bake it and get it down. I'm gonna figure that out. I wonder if it's simply an export as an FBX. That might be the ticket. I'll find out. I'll play with that later. Okay, and then how do I render the image sequence? All right, so how do I render the image sequence? The image sequence. So a couple pieces to that. Here's the clapper with the gear. Here's the Arnold render engine. Currently, I'm rendering with the CPU, so this will take a little longer for me. I only have 6 cores. I got a wee little computer. So, you could, for those of you who have a 20 or 30 series video card, you can render with the GPU. And I do have a 3090. If you switch to a GPU, and you render one time, the initial render on GPU will take longer, but then all the subsequent renders will be very, very fast. So you let the first render take place, it takes a little longer, and then it'll pick up speed. And then rendering with the GPU is more simple because you can set the camera AA to a high number and then just sort of set it and forget it. You don't even, you could think about ray depth a little bit if you want to. That'll have light bounce around a little bit more. It'll take a little longer to render. But when you're rendering the GPU, it's pretty straight. If you don't have a 20 series or 30 series NVIDIA card, you're going to want to render with the CPU. And the CPU, you want to set the camera AA to no higher than 3. 4 perhaps if you really want to push it. And then you could do diffuse 3 and spec 3, and then diffuse, ray depth, spec, set to 2. And then you just wait a little longer. You can see the buckets. These are called buckets. They're basically little tiles, and it's rendering it. It's also using my CPU, so my voice over this is going to be choppy. Okay, and that took a little longer, 39 seconds to render that one piece. Now, I'm going to switch to GPU because I want to be able to speak to you while it's rendering, because my microphone and Discord are using the CPU. So I'm going to use the GPU to render. And I'll go with a lower setting, like 10 on camera AA, just to pick it up a little bit quicker. And you're going to see these little white fireflies scattered around the scene. There's a couple of ways you can clean up the white fireflies. The first way is to clean the sky dome. The sky dome's samples. Set the sampling to 2 or 3. And that will clean up some of the fireflies that are showing up. If you're wondering what this black object is at the bottom, I intentionally put it there so that I wouldn't get a lot of the color bouncing back underneath the trees. So I intentionally put this black object there. If you don't like it, you can remove it. Okay, so here's another thing about rendering, especially when we have multiple cameras. You have to set up under the Common tab your file format, and you have to set up that it's more than a single frame. So you actually have to come in here and say we're rendering more than one frame. And the frame padding basically says what the padding is right here. So the 001. So if we change this to a 3, it'll be 001. If we change this to a 4, it'll be 0001. So thousands of frames. So frame padding there is just the number sequence when you're bringing it into your external software. I recommend half precision, auto crop, and merge AUVs. There's one other thing that I recommend. I can't remember what it is. I want to say it's preserved layer name, but I can't remember. And then the compression type default of zip should work. If that changes, I'll let you know. I have another scene where I did a lot of research on EXRs. And if EXR is too intense for you when you're rendering an image sequence and bringing it out to your post software, then go with something simple that you understand, like JPEG, PNG, or TIFF. EXR is very robust. And then you want to set the sequence, which is the length of it, and you want to set the camera. So then you have to set up renders per camera. So if I'm rendering the blend shot, and then I want to look through the blend shot, this is what the blend shot sees. So this says what's going to render. This says which camera I'm looking through to render. Then you set your resolution, whatever that might be. The larger the resolution, the longer it takes. Should be obvious. and then and of course the duration. So I don't remember how long or where this shot is, but we want to choose a length of that shot. So if we chose, 200 to 300, it'll render that on a step of 1.0. So render every frame. Okay, you can right-click these input fields in order to change how the file is labeled. So you can come in here and say, give it a scene name, a render layer name, and a camera name. So you can organize this by scene, render layer, and camera if you want to. Render layer is this button right here. Render layer gets into a whole nother aspect of rendering that is very much needed in the art of rendering. I can't cover that right now. It'll take us down a seriously deep rabbit hole. For now, we'll render as we see it. But the idea with render layers is that we can not only separate per camera, but we could separate per image data. Like we could separate shadow, we could separate the spec, we could separate the color, and many, many things. We could separate lights using render layers. Then the last polishing step, this is actually now integrated into the Arnold render engine, is that you want to denoise the image. So you want to add an image processor that will denoise the image. So you saw all that little dust and fireflies that were there. So the image denoiser cleans that up. We can look at what that does. And this is now integrated. It used to be that this was a post process, but they've now integrated it as being part of the process. So again, if I switch camera and if I mute the denoiser, you can see all the little fireflies, and then turn on the denoiser and it removes a lot of fireflies. Why would we have a denoiser? Because the only other way to denoise is by increasing camera AA, but you can see that adds a lot of time, especially if you're rendering with the CPU. So the image denoiser removes a lot of the fireflies, so I could actually reduce my camera AA and still have a fairly clean image. And then, and that's about as much as I know about that right now, so I can't go any further. Okay. Then, finally, to actually render the sequence, you go to your rendering menu, render sequence option box, and you choose the camera you want to render, which should be exactly the same camera that you've declared here. So if this is the renderable camera, choose that camera. There is a way to switch cameras on render sequences, so you can set up all cameras to all render, but that requires render layers, and I don't want to get into that right now. For now, you can just switch cameras in the render sequence and in the render settings to see what that camera sees. I recommend you render out sequences with low render quality so that you can at least visualize the whole thing, and then if you feel like you're getting it, then up the ante and increase the quality. Because you could be waiting all night, all day, 3 days, or a whole week for a render to finish. This is why I don't require rendering in this class. I'm interested in seeing animations. I do love a good rendered sequence, but I know it's an exhausting, time-intensive process, so I don't require it. So everything that I just showed here about rendering is not required. If you have any further questions about rendering for your own personal development, feel free to ask me. I don't mind talking about it, but it is not a requirement. Okay, there's one more thing that I thought of as a question that I'd like to develop further. How do I create a higher quality play blast. How do I create a higher quality play blast? So this is on the topic of rendering, but this is a bit easier. So let's say I look through my looking shot. In my looking shot, first and foremost, I'm simply going to disable under show, go to the show menu. I'm going to disable cameras and lights. Well, maybe not lights, because that's hiding my sky dome. Don't really want to see that light right there. So I'm going to pick the spotlight and show you another way to hide the spotlight. I can hide the spotlight under its shape.
We'd also do the Control H thing.
Well, yeah, it's not the Control H thing. Okay, so apparently I don't know of a way to... Oh, hide in playback. There we go. Hide in on play. There it is. Oh yeah. By the way, hide on playback. That makes me think of something else. I could put my light. Where's the spotlight? This spotlight. Come on. Spotlight. Put the spotlight on a display layer, and then turn off the P, and that will hide it during playback. So when playing, the spotlight is hidden. Okay, good. That's what I wanted. All right, and I could just as well... Whoop, I thought I changed the name there. I could just as well change the camera. Instead of hiding cameras here, which I tend to forget, I could just take all cameras. Tell you what. Turn off all objects. Turn on cameras. Select all the cameras. Right click and choose add selected objects. So cameras and lights are on the same. So when I play back, all the cameras and all the lights will disappear. Perfect. Good. So that makes a cleaner play blast. I like that. Then another thing to clean up the play blast. Awesome. Cameras and lights are hidden. Another thing to clean the play blast is to, we got shadows on. Go to Renderer, Viewport 2.0, option box. And now if we had transparent things, I would change transparencies to alpha cut. We don't have anything transparent. But if you did, I'm saying it now, if you had something transparent like leaves that were transparent, change it to alpha cut. What we're looking for would be screen space ambient occlusion. You can see the difference. Just adds a little soft shadow to things. You see these things in your video games like Sims, and you see the occlusion maps in pick a game, Dota, League of Legends, whatever. You see occlusion maps all over the place. And then depending on your video card, you can increase the sampling. And then you also know that this is where you find your fog if you want to add a hardware fog. And this is where you change the color of the fog. And you change the distance of the fog. Start and end distance of the fog. There you go, if you want a little touch of atmosphere. Motion blur. Now this is kind of intense, and I'm not sure this is useful for us because we're animating cameras, but it'll attempt to, with a fairly high degree of sampling, it'll attempt to blur it while it's in motion. I'm not sure if we're really getting much there. And then anti-aliasing. Smooth it out, just like you would see in your video games. And this is going to give a much higher quality play blast. And of course this is more intense, so save before you try this out. I don't know if this is going to crash your system. Like I said, I have a 3090, so I can play more liberally with settings, but you might not have that luxury. So be careful when you're using these settings. You just use lower numbers, or like don't use ambient occlusion, or don't use motion blur. But this should give you a better looking shot. If you want to have cleaner silhouettes, if you are curious about how do I get more out of the silhouettes of whatever's in the shot, you feel free to play with the Sky Dome's texture. If you go to the attribute editor for the Sky Dome and you want to toy with the position, or if you want to toy with the values or the colors to brighten or darken the scene, entirely up to you how you want to tweak and adjust. If you want a little higher contrast in color, feel free to play with that. So these are just some thoughts about how to make things presentable or more presentable. Okay, that's all I have in terms of answering my own questions. That's a good GIF. Just looking over there. Your SpongeBob. Not required, but absolutely awesome. Yeah. So I'm going to put a star on those and treat those as answered. Is there anything else that you'd like me to answer?
Just those folders, but it's not a question.
Folders, right. You'll give me a reminder. Okay, so this is our last camera animation scene. Now we move on to the beginning of dynamics. And then as I develop rigs in the rigging class, the bouncing ball and the ball with legs, I'm going to bring those rigs into this class. So that should be happening in the near future, I'd say within a couple of weeks. So we're going to start with dynamics, and then we're going to kind of knit in or weave in character animation along with our dynamics and see what we can get from there. So bullet physics is up next.
Ooh,
that's all I've got.
Do we? Sorry, do we need to do a roll or something?
I need to do that.
I was just about to say before we start leaving.
Yeah.